Yeah.
Folks, we are back. We're going to pick up H401 and H237. First one, H401, came from the Agricultural Committee, and Katie is going to take us through it. And it's mostly fee-related stuff, and Ted is here to talk through the math. In fact, and such. Good morning. Morning. Hey. Have you been to Ways and Means this year? You don't have to remember, and I can see you. Anyway. Joining us.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like me to share my screen?
That would be lovely, thank you.
So we're looking at H401. This is the committee report that came out of House Agriculture. This is a bill about food manufacturing licensure and licensure fees, which resides in Title 18. The Health Department oversees licensure for restaurants, hotels, and food manufacturing establishments. My guess is your focus is not on the legislative intent. Unless you'd like me to go through it, I might just skip over it and get you to the fees. So this particular section is on fees. I'll kind of walk you through what the lay of the land is. So for fees and statute, it's broken down into a category on bakeries and a category on non-bakeries. And there's a little bit of, I guess, uncertainty or ambiguity in this statute that I'll talk about as we go on. So not only does this bill sort of update what some of the fees are, but it tries to address some of the ambiguity about which group of manufacturers is exempt from having to have a license. And so we've tried to be a little bit more explicit about that. So currently for non-bakeries, if there's a gross annual income between of a manufacturer of a non-bakery product between $10,000 and $50,000, there's a fee of $175. So currently, if there is a gross annual income over $50,000, there's a $275 licensure fee. And the statute implies that there is no license or licensure fee for non-bakeries earning under $10,000, but it is not crystal clear.
Folks, so this change in threshold is like a remarkably long time coming. It has come near this committee a whole bunch of times and has always like not been the right moment because there wasn't a vehicle for it. And it's like a tiny detail. There's a few folks that are like very impacted for it in the public who have been asking for it for a long time. And I just want to celebrate for a moment that like a couple home bakers are going to be really happy about this. Sometimes it's the little tiny things in the work.
So the change that is proposed to just this subdivision 3A non-bakeries is that it would, if there is a gross annual income over 30,000, then there is a fee of $275. And then for non-bakeries earning on $30,000 or less, it's broken into two categories. Those that are producing in a home kitchen and those that are not producing in a home kitchen. So for those that are not producing in a home kitchen with gross receipts under or at $30,000, they have a fee of $175. And then if it's a home operated non-bakery food service establishment with gross income at or less than $30,000, under this, they would be exempt from licensure and licensure fees. So that's the first group, non-bakeries. And then in subdivision 3B, we move to bakeries. So currently a home bakery has a fee of $100. Commercial, 200, no change there. Large commercial, 350, no change there. And then again, there is this sort of a little bit of ambiguity. There's a cross-reference in the existing language that says a home bakery working out of their own kitchen with gross receipts at or under $6,500 is exempt. That's in the next section that we'll look at, and that's being amended. So the change that's being proposed here is that a home bakery with gross receipts over $30,000 would have $100 fee. Again, no change to small commercial or large commercial. And again, just like with the non-bakeries, they're taking the category of $30,000 or less in gross receipts and breaking it into two groups. So there's the group that is produced in a home kitchen, the group that's not produced in a home kitchen. So the group that is not produced in a home kitchen has a fee of $50. A group that is produced in a home kitchen is exempt from licensure and from licensure fee. So those are the fees portion. And then I said there's this sort of like ambiguity in the language that the health department has interpreted, but has always felt is a little bit unclear. And that is this section that's in the same chapter, and it talks about exemptions. So the current language says that the provisions of an individual manufacturing and selling bakery products in his or her own home kitchen that do not exceed $125 a week, that they would be exempt. So the $125 a week is where I'm getting 6,500 gross. But it's the non-bakery section that cross-references to this, which is confusing and doesn't make sense. So what the House Ag Committee decided to do is try to clarify their intent and what would happen moving forward. So the licensure requirements and related licensure fees in this subchapter shall not apply to a food manufacturing establishment. Doesn't specify a bakery or non-bakery, so it applies to both. Operating from a home kitchen whose average gross retail sales are less than or equal to $30,000 per year. So hopefully that tracks with the fees that you just saw. So now we're not cross-referencing in a way to something that doesn't exist. We're sort of matching up what's happening in both sections, if that makes sense.
Can you help me understand why food service and bakeries are treated differently from each other?
Better question for the health department. The health department did provide testimony. I mean, it's from their perspective, it's about risk of public health. So which products are, the safest products to human health and which
Product is safer.
I think that would be the rationale.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense.
I do have a question, Madam Chair, thanks. So up on section A, in regards to the non-bakeries, number 3, home operated food services establishments with a gross receipt of 30,000 or less are exempt. What happens when they're above 30,000?
That's Roman numeral 1 on line 13, gross receipts over 30,000. Then they have a $275 fee.
Okay, so even though it doesn't say home operated, that's where that falls, right?
Yeah, so in this subdivision A, everyone over 30,000 has this $275 fee. Everyone under 30,000 is split into two categories, home and non-home.
Okay.
Home is exempt, non-home has a fee.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Katie? Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't say the word because you were going and then you.
I stopped going, yeah.
Yes.
For the record, Ted Barnett, Joint Fiscal Office. I always am hoping that I'll end saying for the record and share my screen perfectly at the same time, and I'm always a little delayed. Someday I'll get it. So generally speaking, we're only forecasting a minimal impact to revenues in the Food and Lodging Fee Fund at the Vermont Department of Health. There's a lot of wash here, right? You have some folks who previously or who under current law are paying a fee and would be exempted. But on the other hand, you have some folks, so for example, food manufacturing establishment in that kind of first category that's earning gross receipts of $40,000 was paying $175 in fees, would be paying $275. So you're seeing a little bit of revenue loss, a little bit of revenue gain. But it's really minimal in context of the Associated Special Fund, which received $1.48 million in fiscal year 24. I provided the current law number of licenses and fee amounts to get a sense of scope here, but we're primarily talking about impacts in the kind of those first two rows, and those two total are $26,000. So minimal impact, a lot of wash, hard to say with any precision, but it's certainly minimal within context of the fund.
Small commercial, large commercial. I might have missed what the definition is.
It is sitting in my email. It's primarily you have different kind of small commercial is a certain set of bakery equipment and large commercial is a more robust set of equipment. And commercial definitely means that like a certain premises for baking, and small commercial that isn't necessarily provided, but it's primarily kind of the capital that the business has in terms of what type of bakery equipment.
So is it measured by the amount of capital invested or by the size of the ventilator hood?
It's the type, and I'm going to say I just have this in my email, and from reading the different types of equipment, it's not like a specific amount of capital, but if for further context, absolutely the Department of Health to talk to you about that.
And does any of these people get a visit by a health department official or anyone?
I'm assuming if they're being licensed, they would get a visit. What's that?
Let's ask Katie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So the health department said that when somebody's initially being licensed, that they do get a visit, and after that, inspections are sort of by surprise. They're unannounced.
Good,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Creamy stands and check.
Well, yeah. I know someone else.
Any other questions for Ted?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone need anything else on this bill? Yes, Representative
I
Maslin.
have a related question.
Oh,
It may not be in your bailiwick, but Rebecca and I have a constituent who had an issue last fall, I guess it was, with remote sales of jams and jellies and various kinds of things that were sold through a platform. Not Spotify, but
It was a cloud tax that affected
tax
the
that we
vendor program.
that we passed that now is applied to remote sales. That she was surprised and we were surprised, but I mean, we passed it and it does apply. And so it wasn't a big deal for her financially, just to bring the committee up to speed that there are remote aspects of the cloud tax that we passed for good reasons that are showing up unexpectedly at some people's accounts. So we were just letting y'all know.
thank you. Let's discuss that at a future date. Let's discuss that at a future date under a different
That
cover.
would be perfect.
Yes.
Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ted.
Madam Chair, I would move that we find 401 favorable.
Thank you. Representative Kimball has moved that we find H 401 favorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, the clerk can please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. There's Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltes,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Polka,
Yes.
Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie,
Yes.
Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
And we have found 401 favorable, 11-0-0.
Thank you. Representative Maslin, would you like to report this, given your interest in the jam?
Oh, I would be happy.
The jam bit on.
You got your jam on. Thank you very much, Sadie. Oh, you're staying. Thank you very much. Would you like to join us again?
Now we have, what do we have? H 237. This is a bill that kind of creates an endorsement on an already licensed psychologist
But
for a level.
Yesterday, we talked about endorsements on existing licenses.
Oh, okay. Well, great. So you're probably have more expertise than I do at this point. So this is an existing license. It would be a doctoral level psychologist, and they, if certain circumstances are met, could have an endorsement to have prescribing authority added on to that license. Some of the specific criteria include that they are working with a collaborating practitioner who traditionally prescribes in the field of mental health, and that the prescribing psychologist would only be prescribing in the field of mental health as well, and prescribing similar medications that the collaborating prescriber practitioner usually prescribes. So I guess, I don't know how much detail you want in this walkthrough. I know you're sort of interested in the cost. I have a section that, if you imagine that in Title 26, there's a whole chapter on psychologists. This is a section on definitions that apply to the whole chapter. So we're adding definitions like prescribing psychologist and collaborating practitioner. What does it mean by prescriptive authority? And then in section 2, this is still within the chapter on psychologists. This is the powers and duties of the Board of Psychological Examiners. And this is mostly a rulemaking section, what the board should prescribe and rule. I shouldn't say prescribe, what they should require and rule. And we're adding language here about the prescribing authority, including, what the sort of clinical rotations would look like, what the prescriptive authority would look like, how the collaborative practice agreements would be filed with the board. And then we get into a whole new section that would be added to the existing chapter on psychologists that deals specifically with prescribing. And this is where we sort of get into more detail about the specialty. It says in subsection A that a prescribing psychologist doctorate could apply to the board for this specialty. The application shall be made in a manner approved by the board and include the payment of any required fees. So it's not requiring a fee here, but it's leaving it open to require fees. That would be something that would be determined by the board.
Would the fees then come back to us once they are determined?
That's a good question. There's no language that says a fee should be recommended, and come back in a report.
Oh. Yeah,
You're gonna want that. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't advance.
So,
And Lauren's coming in a couple minutes.
oh, good.
We want to wait to figure that out.
Okay. But this is really all it says on fees in the bill.
Okay, do you want to take us through anything else in the bill? So we've covered it.
It depends what your interest is. There is language in subsection B about like how a person would be eligible for this type of endorsement. So they already hold a license, they've already completed a postdoctoral training program in psychopharmacology, and they've completed certain clinical rotations, they've completed a national certifying exam as determined by rule, they meet all other requirements for obtaining the specialty as determined by rule. Then there's a list of what the criteria is for prescribing medication. I've sort of mentioned some of these items, but that they're working with a written collaborative agreement with a collaborating provider. They're only prescribing, their prescriptive authority is limited to what the collaborating practitioner prescribes and for the reasons the collaborating practitioner prescribes, talks about how that's filed. And then the specialty by endorsement, this opens the door that somebody in a different, this also pertains to a fee. So the director of the board may, upon payment of the required fee, grant a prescribing specialty without examination. If an applicant holds an active psychologist prescribing authority in another U.S. or Canadian jurisdiction and the requirements of their authority in that jurisdiction and the judgment of the director are substantially equivalent to the requirements of this section. So this is saying if you pay a fee and you're sort of meeting the right criteria, that if you have this endorsement in a different jurisdiction, you could practice in this jurisdiction.
Can you take me through the timeline of, so they're gonna figure out some rule stuff.
So the act itself takes effect this year, including the rulemaking authority of the board, so that they have a couple years to, not a couple years, they have a year to sort out the rules. And then this comes back, or it takes effect, the rest of the provisions take effect July 1, 2026.
So we could approve the fee next session and not slow down any progress?
I would imagine the answer is yes.
Okay, great. We'll hear from Lauren on it, but.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a 6-minute break where we wait for Nolan and Lauren, and maybe you could draft during the 6-minute break.
Sure.
Before we do that, can I ask?
Sorry. Yeah.
During the committee's deliberation process, were they following that on looking at the ability of the Secretary of State to charge for an additional license or endorsement on an existing license?
I have to be honest, I was almost never in the room when
Okay.
this was taken up.
All right.
Yeah, I was, sorry, I was pulled in too many
Just
directions.
thinking they may have assumed that it was also the same endorsement fee that we talked about yesterday.
And Lauren and Nolan can probably both answer that.
Yeah.
Were you here because you're covering this bill mysteriously? Oh, great. I have Nolan on the agenda for it. Oh, but it's you.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Ted. Would you like to come sit in the chair and talk to us? Oh, I missed the text. Sorry. Okay, great.
Ted Burnett, Joint Fiscal Office, very quickly, I think in an email with the Secretary of State, Lauren's coming, Deputy Secretary Hibbert's coming up to clarify, but in email, the understanding, right, is that no specialty endorsement is currently being assessed a fee. And the intention is that with 472, if it were to be enacted, would have a $100 fee associated with these endorsements. And so it would all kind of work together. But I would.
Does the language do that now?
The language doesn't say anything. I mean, you saw what the language says.
Yes.
It basically just says a fee if required.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I think we have to figure out a way to make those two things talk to each other.
okay.
So we have another bill. Who knows what that bill was called from yesterday?
476.
472.
Yes.
Great, you know that because you just said that. Sorry. Okay, Katie, we have a bill 472.
Yeah.
That sets up an endorsement fee that we just voted out yesterday.
Okay, so you would like to track that language?
Yes,
Is it apply to all endorsements?
I believe so, yes.
So that will be tricky because then you're cross-referencing something that doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
You just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm. And it's more that, I don't know if it needs to track it or it just needs to be set up it could duplicate it or it could be set up so that it would apply to it when it passes. I don't know. And maybe we could, okay, let's finish. Do you have anything else to tell us?
No, that's,
Okay.
yes, I mean, under current law, there'd be no impact, but yes, it would all depend on how it materializes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and under if it materialized in the direction we're imagining it would, do you have a sense of the impact?
I looked at the Secretary of State's fee report and it looks like there are about 70 doctorate level psychologists and it would depend on how many of them decided to get the endorsement.
Okay, thanks.